Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos and welcome. So we always learn. This is going to be too loud now? I can't adjust the volume. Okay, so I'll whisper. We always learn something new, even when it's old. They say, Ein chadash tachat hashamesh. There's nothing new under the sun, other than a different way of realizing what the truth is. Those of you who are regulars and have been following over the last several weeks know that we've been struggling with the necessity of announcing two sets of page numbers, because those of us in the sanctuary have the Shabbat version of the prayer book, this version, but some of our members at home have the doubled version, which is Shabbat as well as weekdays and festivals. That's not the large print version, that's a doubled version. And we were announcing at least I was, announcing the page numbers for both volumes, until a very wise member of the Congregation and Ritual Committee named Michael Benish said, Rabbi, aren't you aware that at the bottom of the page it has both sets of numbers? So rather than reading based on the numbers that we would ordinarily see, I'm going to request that those in the sanctuary look at the numbers that are in italics. No, not in brackets. Parentheses are in brackets. It might even be, if your eyes are good enough, it might even be a different color. Right? Is it a little different color? Okay, all right. So, in other words, what we used to say will begin on page 10, now we're going to say begins on page 128, even though it's at the beginning of the book. But it's page 128. So there'd be more confusion for you rather than for me. Okay. So we'll all learn. We'll get there. We'll get there. It's going to be much easier. So for everyone, whichever version of the prayer book you have, it's page 128 at the top of the page. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. 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 Hine ma tovu shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Near the bottom of the next page, so that would be 129. Ki yeshmer Shabbat el yishmereini. Ki yeshmer Shabbat el yishmereini. Oti leolemeha beino uveini. Oti leolemeha beino uveini. Ki yeshmer Shabbat el yishmereini. Ki yeshmer Shabbat el yishmereini. Oti leolamea, Beino uveini. Oti leolamea, Beino uveini. Amy, would you like to greet everyone, please?
We would like to welcome everybody to Beth Shalom Temple Center with Shabbat. Please turn your cell phones off or in the vibrate mode. The restrooms are located to your rear. The fire extinguishers are located by the rear exit door and in the kitchen. The defibrillator is located behind you on the wall next to the prayer book shelves. First aid and blood control kits are clearly marked and located in the bima, in the kitchen, and in the library. The front double doors which you entered through are also normal exit doors. Others are clearly marked exit doors are for emergency only. If the power goes out, the emergency lighting should immediately turn on for your safety. In the event of a potentially dangerous or threatening situation, you may be directed to move into our kitchen to your rear. It may serve as our safe room in certain emergency situations. The main entrance doors will be locked once the services begin. If you need to leave after the service has begun, please see the security person near the foyer exit doors, and he or she will let you out through the double doors you entered through. Are there any new members or guests attending service tonight? We'd like to recognize and welcome you. Jill, would you like to stand and tell us a little something about you?
My name is Jill Fabian. I met the rabbi with my daughter.
A year ago? Not quite? When
Yeah,
she was
maybe
still
close to a
looking
year
at
ago.
colleges.
She was looking at colleges, right? And she got bat mitzvahed at 18, just after her 18th birthday. And she's at Shabbat as we speak in Santa Cruz. She's going to UC Santa Cruz, and I am now an empty nester.
Congratulations.
I don't know about that, but nevertheless.
Join the sisterhood, you won't be alone.
And I'm thinking about, pretty sure, taking the class to learn a little bit more, starting next Thursday. Thank you.
Welcome you, Jill. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Okay. And there are other announcements and programs, but you can check the flyers and the list and whatever out in the lobby area at Vault, or check the website, and there'll be a shofar coming out soon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Our worship will continue with the lighting and blessing of our Shabbat candles. Jean, if you would. Now, this will be page 120 and 121. Again, in the bracketed page numbers, 120, 121. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Jill, you're going to make it.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work for magic.
The magic didn't work.
The wick wasn't quite long enough. Or we need a different
You
skill set.
thought you
one
could
or
still
the other.
use your Hogwarts magic from last year.
You got it.
You got it.
There you go.
ציוונו והדגנר של שבת. Amen.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbos. Page 138. Lecha Dodi is 138 in the bracketed pages. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala pnei Shabbat nekabela. We'll be singing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. All right? Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishmianu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shem u'tiferet v'litehila Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha Ki mekor habraka Merosh mikedem nesucha Sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Lecha Dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela. The next page, verse 5. Hitorri, Kiva orech kumi uri, shir daveri, kevod Adonai alayich nigla, lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 9, we traditionally rise and face the door. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'tzohala, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela.
They can't hear you at home,
They cannot hear me at home.
so turn it off.
That's interesting.
I mean, I can hear barely, but that was Helene Fields just
Okay,
called.
we're still experimenting with the right way for this to work.
We're working.
I'll be loud again.
Okay.
No, it sounds better than the first
Trust me,
time.
we've had one estimate for, a new sound system.
Totally new sound system?
What?
Totally new sound.
Totally new sound system.
That works.
Shabbat Shalom. We're not going to begin all over again. That's all right, you know.
It needs to work.
It needs to work too.
Yeah.
With a new camera and a new everything.
We'll continue.
So I could hear.
Page, again, in the brackets, page, for those of us in the sanctuary,
Just the one page number.
What
Just
page
kidding.
number?
141,
That's it.
That's it.
141
That's
in
it.
the sanctuary,
Everywhere.
141 at home,
Good.
okay?
Yay.
get there. I hear a phone ringing. Okay. 93rd Psalm. Adonai is sovereign. God is robed in grandeur. Adonai is robed. God is girded with strength. The world stands firm. It cannot be shaken. Your throne stands firm from of old. From eternity you have existed. The ocean sounds, Adonai. The ocean sounds its thunder. The ocean sounds its pounding. Above the thunder of the mighty waters, more majestic than the breakers of the sea, is Adonai majestic on high. Your decrees are indeed enduring. Holiness befits your house. Adonai, you are God for all times. Skipping now, still in the brackets, it would be page 263. 263. And now for the most part, we're going to be page after page after page after page after page. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah v'yalma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei chol beit Yisrael v'hagala v'hagala uv'yizmahan kariv v'imeru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivorach le'olam elol me'ol maya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei kudsha b'richu le'elam min kol birchata v'shihirata Tushbechata v'nechemata da'miran be'alma v'imeru. Amen. Our call to worship, 264. I invite you to please rise if you are comfortable in doing so. Baruch hu et Adonai ha'mevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vahed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chokhmah poteach she'arim uvitvuna meshane itim umachalif et hazmanim umsader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono borei yom v'layla Golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom u'mevi laila, uma'avdil bein yom u'vein laila Adonai tzavaot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai hama'arif aravim. The next page, in each age we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment we are addressed by the world. In each age, we are challenged by our ancient teaching.
At each moment, we stand face to face with truth.
In each age, we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment, the knowing heart is filled with wonder.
In each age, the children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world firm on the foundation of truth.
Baruch ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vahed. Please be seated. (268) familiar words from Deuteronomy. V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol vavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בהם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Amen. Next page, we worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all. Before our eyes, there's a vision of perfection, of order and goodness.
There is evil enough to break the heart, and there is good enough to exalt the soul.
Or when will redemption come?
When we grant everyone what we claim for ourselves.
Long ago we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High.
We learned God's presence in his time and event, so we celebrate his power and make us free.
La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osefele, nora tehilot osefele. Malechutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Ze'eli anu ve'amru, Ze'eli anu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. V'ne'emar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, go'alo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch ata Adonai Gaal Yisrael. Together at the bottom of the next page, which is 271. Give us a place to rest, O God. Shelter us in the long, soft evening shadows of your truth. You are true protection and safety. In your presence we find love and acceptance.
Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace and overwhelming love over our Jerusalem and yours.
Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim
Shalom. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo ve'al Yerushalayim Shalom. Baruch atah Adonai hapores sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. And then if you turn the page, this is Dan Nichols' melody of Vishamru. Vishamru B'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam Brit Olam Vishamru B'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam Brit Olam Beini uvein B'nei Yisrael Od Hile Olam Ki sheshet yamim Asa Adonai Asa Adonai Et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat La'asot et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam Brit Olam V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. I love the way those two link together, those two things. Our tefillah, the central part of our worship service, beginning, again, in the bracketed pages, 273. 207.3. The ark will be open. I invite you to rise if you're comfortable in doing so. We'll chant the first several pages in Hebrew together. Adonai, sefatai tiftach, ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu Mimoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'HaNorah, El Elyon, Ugumel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo v'Ahava, Melech Ozer Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Atah Rab Le'Hoshia, Mashiv HaRuach, U'morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayeh HaKol ורחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומטהר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש, ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Please be seated. Continuing silently, privately, through page 282. 282, again, the bracketed numbers, or those are the traditional words of the prayer book, or the thoughts and meditations of your own hearts. Again, silently, privately for a few moments, and if you're following in the book, until page 282. Page 284. 284, please join me at the top of the page. Help me, O God, to find still moments, quiet spaces within to refresh my soul. Cease my questions, my inner debates, and let me meditate on your goodness. Help me, O God, to nurture my courage, recalling moments of strength. Let me remember days of fortitude and the certainty of your regard. Help me, O God, to turn to the light, to feel
warmth of your touch. My own faith is outstretched, alive, alive in your sight.
Yehiyu leratso, im refi, vehegion libi, lefanecha Adonai Suri Adonai Suri the Gohali Ose Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel Ve'himru Amen. And I invite you to turn again in the bracketed page numbers 371. 371. Our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers turn to those who are in need, those who are suffering, those who are ill, those who are alone, and those who are in pain. We ask that God will bless them with refuah shalema, with wholeness, with a sense of healing, with health restored and strength revived. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu, may the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah, bless and heal all those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion. May their health be restored. May their strength be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. Refuat hanefesh, refuat haguf, bagalav izman kariv. In Amar Amen, we say Amen. We'll pause for a moment. I invite you to think in your hearts. If you wish to mention a name silently of someone in your prayers, we join with you in the hope that they will be given a sense of shalemut, of wholeness, and of healing and of peace. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Friends, even in the midst of a very, very difficult week, with acts of violence and terror and unease, with illness around us, with pain and loss, our tradition actually still says, Misha nichnas chodesh adar marbim b'simcha. As we welcome and anticipate the month of Adar, our joy increases. So especially in light of what we've been encountering, and especially in light of the way that we all can use the breath of joy and of celebration, the month of Adar, which of course contains the festival of Purim, the most jubilant celebration in the Jewish calendar. The month of Adar will begin Tuesday evening into Wednesday this coming week. That means that the 2 weeks after the beginning of Adar, on the full moon, will be the celebration of Purim. So mark that on your calendars. I think it's March 6th, I think, is the Monday. Fifth, it's the Monday, okay? And please join us in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll read the Megillah, and we have a spiel this year. It's entitled Megillah on the Roof. You can guess what the music is based on, and we have our world famous not ready for Purim time players who will be joining us, and we'll all sing along, not only traditional words but also new words to familiar Broadway-style melodies. Having said all that, and again, to welcome the month of Adar, page 379 in the brackets, 379. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, shetchadesh aleinu et hachodesh haba, l'tova v'livracha v'nititein lanu chayim arukim, Chaim shel shalom, Chaim shel parnasah, Chaim shetehei banu ahavat Torah v'yirat shamayim, Chaim sheyimalu mishalot libenu letova v'nomar Amen. Our God and God of our ancestors, may the new month bring us goodness and blessing. May we have long life, peace and prosperity, a life exalted by love of Torah and reverence for the divine, a life in which the longings of our hearts are fulfilled for good. Rosh Chodesh Adar Yihiyeh Biyom Revi'i Haba. The new month of Adar will begin Tuesday evening this week. We will celebrate together. Also, I wanted to spend a few moments. This will not be a formal sermon style. I trust that many, if not all of you, have been following with concern and perhaps with confusion and perplexity of what's been happening politically in the state of Israel. Normally, again, as we would talk about welcoming the month of Adar, there's only 2 or 3 months from that point until what normally would be the greatest celebration for our generation of Jews, and that's the 75th anniversary of the establishment of an independent state of Israel. That will be in May, early May, and the community celebration is actually on Sunday, April 30th. There will be more information about that. But I have heard from many people, and as I talk to my colleagues, and as we look on the official as well as the unofficial rabbis' chat things online, a lot of us are concerned. How do we celebrate Israel when we have such great problems in understanding what's going on in the country, in the state? And not only problems in understanding, but those of us who do understand it have such strong disagreement with what's happening there. So I thought I would spend a few minutes this evening with an explanation of exactly what is happening without any value judgment, just laying it out. And then for as many of you as possible, if I'm doing my job correctly, to understand exactly what has happened politically in Israel, how they got to this point, and what it means. And then just a few comments at the end where I'm going to be quoting some of my esteemed colleagues with whom I share concern as to what we should be saying to those of you who, like us, want to somehow channel the energy and the concern about Israel and be able to still celebrate over the next several months as we look forward to Yom HaAtzmaut, to the 75th, the celebration of independence. Okay. Israel's parliament, most of you know, is called the Knesset. Right? And as opposed to what the form of government that we're used to in the United States, any Canadians here have a different orientation. But what we're comfortable in the United States, Israel, it's a unicameral parliament. It's one house. Okay, they don't have Senate and House of Representatives. It's one parliament. 120 members, and every Israeli citizen can vote for all 120 members of Knesset. They're not assigned geographically. They all run on a particular party, of which there are at least 27 registered parties in the, well, you know, we're Jews, right? Okay, all right. So there are 27 at least registered parties, and some of them not Jewish. There are several Arab parties, because there are Arab citizens, and there are 2 Druze parties as well. In order to try to have some kind of system that will work, the parliamentary elections, which are mandated to take place no less than every 6 years. But if the government, 120 seats, if the government loses its majority and loses the confidence of the will of the parliament, the government dissolves and they can call for new elections. Fortunately, it doesn't take them 3 years to prepare for all their elections. They do it in about 3 months. And taxes pay for everything. It's not individual, but that we won't go there. All right. Okay. So, in order to maintain a certain order with all of those parties, they've established, and it changes each election, but they've established what they call a threshold, that a particular party must have a certain number of votes, a threshold proportion of the total number of votes to have their party considered eligible for seats in the parliament. So, in other words, out of the 9 million potential voters in Israel, I think in this last election, they had to have a minimum of 60,000 votes. If a party didn't get 60,000 votes, or an individual candidate, whichever way you want to say it, didn't get a minimum of 60,000 votes, those votes are automatically cast aside. Okay. Which is a problem for us, but that's the way that they work it. So in order to find or to build a majority of 61 votes in the Knesset, in the parliament, they have coalition negotiations, that would be a polite word, debates, discussions, bartering, bargaining. You know, that if you will vote for us most of the time, we'll support you in this area that's most important to you. If you will support us, the prime minister candidate says, if you will support us in most of our votes, we'll give you the portfolio of defense, or of taxation, or of agriculture, or labor, or religious affairs, an example that I'll use in a moment. For the first time in history, in Israel's 74 years of history, I'll take one step back. In the last election, where, this is going to sound familiar to Americans, where the ultimate goal, admittedly, of most citizens was to push Netanyahu out of office. Sound familiar? Okay. The ultimate goal. They really didn't care who the other candidates were, or what was going to happen. They had enough of Netanyahu and didn't like the way that he was running the country, and so there was a mishmash coalition for the first time that included two of the Arab parties were in the ruling majority, and for the first time, we talked about this 2 years ago, for the first time the ultra-Orthodox were out of power. For the first time, the ruling coalition did not include any of the ultra-Orthodox. So the liberal and secular movements in Judaism, especially in the Israeli population, were ecstatic of what that was going to mean. That government lasted about a year and a half, okay, because of the influence and all kinds of reasons. I can't explain all that, but as you probably know, there were new elections back in November, right around the time that several of us with the temple trip were in Israel, and Netanyahu's still at the head of the party, even though he's under indictment. But that also sounds familiar. But it's also another crazy story in the way that they're trying to deal with it. But Netanyahu's party came out with the largest number of votes. Still only a plurality, nowhere near a majority. But from taking the Likud party, that's Netanyahu's party, and going almost exclusively to the ultra-Orthodox parties, of which there are 4 major ones and 1 or 2 small ones, and to the parties on the far right who could care less about the ultra-Orthodox, but their issue is the settlements and trying to push Arabs and Palestinians off of Israeli territory, if not peacefully, then with armed force. And all of those parties together, working with Netanyahu, made 63 votes, and so they have the majority. The president has to invite Netanyahu to form a government, which is what he did, making all kinds of promises. Again, the parallels to what's happening in the United States are worthy of another discussion, but making all kinds of promises to the far right and to some individuals, okay, well, if you bring your party along and your followers along and work with me, I'll make you the fellow who wants to literally push all Arabs out of the West Bank, out of Israeli territory. Literally, he was made in charge of the military and police forces that control the West Bank. He said, if you put me in charge, me and my party will consistently support you, Mr. Netanyahu. We'll make sure that you don't go to trial. We'll make sure that you don't go to jail, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And those kinds of promises were being made to the groups that support the settlers in the West Bank, were being made to the ultra-Orthodox, who could care less. Matter of fact, they would be storming this sanctuary and this bima if they knew that a Reform rabbi was talking. But, because there's no authenticity to Reform. Just a second, Chris. Okay, all right. And various other demands that were made for some of these small parties that barely had enough over the threshold, as opposed to the liberal left-wing parties that barely missed having the threshold by, in some cases, fewer than 100 votes. Okay? And so they could not participate in any of the negotiations or anything like that. So the three main issues become the supporting the further settlement development and what that means for the Arab population, the Palestinian population, stronger control by the ultra-Orthodox in making Israel a theocracy, run more according to traditional Jewish law. And then the third issue, which is the one that, if you're following the news, every Saturday night now, and it's not because Saturday night is a free night, it's because it's at the end of Shabbat, okay? Every Saturday night for the last, tomorrow will be the 7th, there have been no fewer than 70,000 protesters gathering together around the country to protest the fact that the Netanyahu government, as presently constituted, wants to rewrite the rules. Now, Israel doesn't have a constitution, don't forget. They just have basic laws. But so Netanyahu's government wants to rewrite the basic laws so that the parliament, by a simple majority, meaning 61 votes, can overrule a decision of the Supreme Court. Okay? It's not called the Supreme Court, it's called the High Court. And what that means for the thought of Israel as a democracy, that if all of these people who have achieved their power and their influence by political means, if they can overrule something that is determined from the standpoint of justice, and the Supreme Court, the High Court, works in the sense of understanding legality, recognizing the influence of Jewish tradition and Jewish values. That's the main issue. That's the main issue that Israelis, yes, they're concerned about some of the racism, they're concerned about what it means for the Arab population and will that lead to further war. They're concerned about the ultra-Orthodox and what that means about their own their personal religious rights and whatever. Incidentally, there was a woman who went to the Western Wall, the Kotel, went to the Western Wall yesterday, dressed inappropriately. Okay? Dressed inappropriately, which meant that her shoulders were visible and her knees were visible. She was arrested and she's being fined 500 shekels. Okay, it's more than $100, but just because that's quote unquote offensive, even to be out, not close to the wall, but even to be in the plaza, if you know the area. Okay, so those are some of the issues that are troubling, not only to a very healthy percentage of the Israeli population. The estimate is that there are going to be 5, tomorrow night there will be 5 major demonstrations in protest around the country. The estimate, unless the weather turns really bad, the estimate is that there'll be about 120, 130,000 people out demonstrating. Those are the issues. That's how they got to this point. I'm leaving all the names that you don't need to know about, Ben Gvir, Levine, and all these other issues. The president of the state, Butzi Herzog, has come out and said, please, we need to have a fair and respectful discussion about all this. The Knesset, the parliament, can't just ramrod this through. It will lead to civil war, really. Okay, all right. Chris, I'm sorry, what's the question? Or did you forget it now?
I was just thinking, is it like lobbying? Is that what they're doing when they have that threshold? Is that a lobbying for?
No, that means that their candidates couldn't even stand to finally be considered to be part of the coalition. Okay. There's a party called Meretz, for example, which was founded basically as a civil rights. Let's call it the Civil Rights Party. Okay. All right. Used to be a very influential party. They used to have typically 5 or 6 or even 7 seats in the parliament, in the Knesset. 0. They didn't make the threshold. So that would be like saying the ACLU does not have any say. There's no voice to be heard in any deliberations. That's where it would be lobbying, yes, but they can't even be heard, in that sense. Okay, I know. Like I said, I didn't want to do this. This is not in a formal way, but. Different rabbinic groups and different Jewish community leadership groups have been meeting for several weeks now, trying to, on the one hand, clarify for the diaspora community outside of Israel, clarify what these issues are, not trying to tell anybody how they should feel or what they should do, but to try to make it clear that if there are things that are of concern, these are some of the ways that you might proceed. The Massachusetts Board of Rabbis. Have any Massachusetts people here? Thanks, Grace. Okay, all right. So the Massachusetts Board of Rabbis. Now, this is Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Reconstructionist. This is not just the liberal wing. They've issued a 6-page document, okay, with the glasses on because the printer was very light, so I apologize. I just want to share a little bit of it, okay? They begin with quoting Isaiah, L'man Sion lo echashel, L'man Yerushalayim lo eshkot. For the sake of Zion I will not be silent, for the sake of Jerusalem I will not be still. Now they start with the explanation of what I was talking about, and the question is, can rabbis around the world, can Jewish communities around the world, can we take a stand against what seems to be happening, anti-democratic, anti-Jewish values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the Massachusetts Board of Rabbis said, how could we not take a stand? Therefore, this statement which we are promoting will serve several purposes. We will seek to define the most overt dangers of the new Israeli coalition as we see it, in a way that avoids overly partisan politics, but asserts consensus principles that we stand for, namely an Israel that is safe and democratic, that respects Jewish pluralism, that works in partnership with the Jewish community around the world, and which rejects violent extremism, racism, and corruption. Also, we will work against trends that seek to detach or reduce the attachment of our communities to Israel. To the contrary, we call for more Israel engagement to demonstrate that this extremist government does not represent the pro-Israel sentiments of the overwhelming majority of the Jewish world. And they encourage the Jewish community that is being served by the Massachusetts Board of Rabbis, and I would endorse this. I want to share it with you as well. We encourage our members to engage with and support more than ever those Israelis who are pushing back against these measures. We are inspired by the thousands of Israelis of diverse political points of view who are objecting to the extremism of this coalition, to articulate the vision of Israel more clearly and forcefully than ever, especially in pluralistic Jewish organizations. We must hold those organizations in which we are stakeholders accountable and not allow them to slip into being passive or inaction when it comes to this government's egregious excesses, and to focus on specific policies, statements, and actions in our criticism to avoid any appearance of contributing to the delegitimization of Israel or Zionism, to assert that democracy is a Jewish value and a pillar on which Israel is established, and to teach the ways in which democracy is linked with the Torah's vision of self-rule, to teach and emphasize texts from Jewish tradition, written and oral Torah, as well as texts from modern Zionist history and literature, that assert the vision of an Israeli society rooted in the common good, recognition of the inherent dignity and human rights of every individual, the rejection of zealotry and freedom from religious coercion, to not be endlessly negative, but to positively articulate a vision of what Israel and Zionism can and should be. Towards this end, it is imperative that we do celebrate Israel's upcoming 75th anniversary and express love and excitement for Israel's extraordinary accomplishments. We will not be intimidated, nor will we relinquish the pro-Israel positions to those who are only on an extreme point of view. So, there will be more to come, but not only in explaining, not only in encouraging you to make your own feelings and opinions felt, but certainly to maintain and to emphasize that even though we might disagree with this government, even though this government is making decisions that, God forbid, might lead into very, very treacherous ground, this is still our Israel, and this is still our homeland, and this is still something that we celebrate, and we say Gam ze ya'avor. Just like the last government only lasted for a year and a half because they couldn't bring about consensus, maybe this government similarly will fall, and the population will rise up and say, you know, Dayen, well, we've got a different holiday coming. Dayenu, okay? Yeah, right? And we don't like the direction that this government is going, and they don't have to wait for 6 years. They can influence and perhaps bring about more elections. The likelihood is that it's not going to be the people who will bring that about with their protest. It's going to be one or two of these extremists who, when Netanyahu or some of the other parties say, wait a minute, that's going a little too far, and say, but wait a minute, you promised me that we would do this, so if we can't do it, we're going to bolt, we're going to leave the coalition, and the government will fall, and it'll happen that way. That's my thinking anyway. Amen. Well, it remains to be seen, but Im tirtzu ein zo agada, as Herzl said, if you dream, it's, or, you know, it will come about. All right, we continue. The bottom of page 586 in the brackets. 586 is Aleinu, the bottom of the page. The ark will be open. I invite you to rise again if you're comfortable in doing so. We'll be chanting in Hebrew, beginning 586, the brackets, and then the next several pages. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latei kedula liotzer b'reishit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzon, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, v'gohor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech, Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu Noteh Shamayim B'Yosei Haaretz Moshav Yikaro B'Shamayim Imal Ushkinatu Zo B'Govei Meromim Hu Eloheinu Eino Emet Malkeinu Ebezulato Kakahatu b'Torahato v'yadata hayom v'hashevota elevavecha ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim b'shamayim ima ve'al ha'aretz mitachat eno. 591. V'nehemar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol haaretz, v'yom hahu, yiyeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Page 597. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth. We remember our own loved ones and those whom our friends and neighbors have lost. The martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, they died al Kiddush Hashem, in the sanctification of God's name. We honor the memories of those who gave their lives in the service of forces of decency and democracy around the world, as well as victims of natural disasters such as earthquakes and typhoons, and innocent victims of senseless acts of violence and hatred and racism, but those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. We remember them. We meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. As a community, we honor the memories of those who have been taken to their eternal home in this past month. We remember Joe Feinstein and Wanda Wolofsky. We think of those who have died in this past year: Celia Abramson, Helen Beckelman, David Allen Gaiman, Wendy Wallach-Levy, Ronald Nassalo, Tim Orrick, Louis Palm, Michael Rabin, Eric Rothenberg, Denise Rutenberg, Robert Sasner, and Lawrence Vogel. And we honor the memories of those, the anniversary of whose death or yahrzeit we mark at this time in this month. We think of Eva Ackerberg, Joseph Alster, Florence Cohn, Jean Gittell, Joseph Friedman, Abraham Krieger, Sidney Lansky, Edith Lerner, Irene Makoff, Dory Roman, Louis Rosenberg, David Schaefer, Julius Sobel, Lou Trevitsky, Sylvia Weitzman, Joseph Wiener, Rochelle L. Wright, Celia Yellen, and we honor the memories of those of our people who perished in the Shoah, countless others whose names are unknown, for whom there is no one but us to recite their Kaddish. Are there others whose names anyone would wish to add? Those whom we remember, Zichronam Livracha.
Sally Mayer.
May their memories truly be for a blessing. The Kaddish Memorial Prayer, page 598 in the brackets, 598. Our tradition is that we rise as one community in sympathy with those who mourn, reciting words hallowed by centuries of faith. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shmei Rabbah. V'yalma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ol'olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal Shmei Kudsha Barichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran b'yalma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlom arava min shamaya, v'chayim aleinu, kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, huya aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol b'nei adam, v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring a touch of comfort to those of us who mourn, and may God, in answer to our prayers, bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all humanity, to which we say, Amen. You may be seated if you are comfortable in doing so. Thanks to those who participated this evening. There's an Oneg Shabbat with Kiddush and Motzi now in the back, not on the side, now in the back. Right? Thanks to those who set it up for us. We'll join in. We'll use the traditional melody of Adon Olam tonight. Right? Yeah. Okay. Really? Because we know it. Well, I was gonna do something else, but I won't. All right. 625. 625 in the bracketed pages. And then, again, please join us for Kiddush and Motzi. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Le'ed Nasa B'chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu hoveh, v'hu yiyeh, b'tifara, v'hu echad, v'ein sheni, lehamshilo leachbira, v'li reshit, v'li tachlit, v'lo haoz, v'hamisra, v'hu eli, v'chai goali. V'tzur chebli b'yet Sahara, v'hu nisi umanos li, menat kosi v'yom ekra, v'yado afkid ruchi, v'yet ishan v'yahira, v'im ruchi geviati, Adonai li, Velo ira. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom.